Seed diversity is disappearing, and 3 chemical companies own more than half. Our food security hinges on the struggle now underway over who controls the Earth's seeds. Why is this underway, and why is seed diversity disappearing?
A few companies now control most of the seed supply of the world. Most of the seeds that are planted and most of the crops that are grown are coming from these few companies. And this is kind of scary because they control life. Whoever controls the seeds controls life itself. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather see life be held by something other than the profit motive of a few companies. And yet, this consolidation of power is happening partly because of market forces, partly because our agricultural system has been becoming increasingly undiverse, as, quite honestly, a lot of us don't like farming. And so humans have migrated away from growing their own food. And most people don't like to be farm workers. And so we try to have machines do it. And it's easier for a machine to harvest a field when that field is all one thing, because that's how machines work, because they just like to do one thing. So we've created a farming system that is fundamentally based around convenience from machines, automation, mechanization, and mass production. And that is at complete odds with diversification and biodiversity. And this is concerning because we have less resilience now in the face of droughts and floods and extreme weather events, because certain crops do better in one circumstance and others do better in other circumstances, and we now have less options to work with on a mass scale. It's concerning because we need more pesticides to control for the specific bugs that like to eat those specific crops. Biodiversity is a great deterrent against pests. Monocropping is not. And it's a concern also because with the loss of biological diversity, we are depleting soil diversity, which is in turn coming back to impact our own microbiomes. The amount of bacteria in the world and the diversity of that bacteria is plummeting. And that shows up directly in our own bodies and our own digestive tracts. It turns out that we are completely dependent on trillions of microorganisms to digest our food, to produce neurotransmitters that keep our brains happy, to function and live well. And it's an intimate, intertwined relationship that we're only beginning to unpack. The microbiome isn't just in your gut, it's also on your skin. It's everywhere that you interact with the world around you, inside and outside your body. And if your microbiome is depleted of those critical little critters, you're less healthy, period. So we are ravaging the biodiversity of our world, and in that process, we're destroying it on the inside as well. Fortunately, we can turn that around by choosing to eat more diverse foods, by choosing to eat from local farms and farmers. We can contribute to replenishing.
Why would I care about where the waste from animal agriculture goes? How does it affect me or my health or my planet?
Livestock produce a lot of excrement. They pee, they poop. That's the simple reality in elementary school language. And that manure, that waste accumulates. They don't pay for sewer hookups. They don't have septic systems. They don't have composting toilets. It accumulates in these massive lagoons, in these massive piles. And while some of it is recycled or reused as fertilizer, most of it is not. Our farms do not have the capacity to use most of it. So then it ends up contaminating our water, contaminating our air, contaminating our whole planet. Nitrates and nitrites and some of the contaminants that were even in the feed that the animals ate wind up in their feces, and that too is there. And so there's these massive amounts of pollution coming out of this, which is polluting our water and our land. And this comes back to haunt us because there's a lot of our groundwater, a lot of our drinking water that's contaminated. So then municipalities put more chlorine in the water to deal with that, which then creates chloramines and other toxins that are making our water less safe to drink. And it's a real issue. It's a big issue. And again, it's another reason why eating lower on the food chain helps to avoid it and create a safer ecosystem for all of us.
3 systematic reviews of over 40 publications examining the relationship between sources of funding and research outcomes found that studies with industry funding were more likely to report results that favored the company's products than studies with independent sources of funding. How does this contribute to the amount of animal products that are consumed in the United States?
The meat, dairy, and egg industries are a big lobby. They got a lot of money because we spend a lot of money on their products. And they're using that money in part to keep us eating their products and to keep us thinking they're good for us. And funding of research studies is one of the most effective ways to accomplish that. They've been doing it for a long time. And unfortunately, there's another factor too, which is that a lot of the researchers themselves have a bit of bias because they are eating certain ways and they want to keep doing so. And so just thinking about it functionally, would you expect smokers to conduct and lead an impartial study on whether or not cigarette smoking is healthy? Would you want some non-smokers in the mix? Probably, if you want accurate data. And so in the same way that people are biased by research funding and industry ties, they may also be biased by their own personal lifestyle habits and choices. So what would happen if, for example, a study on meat consumption and its health impacts was conducted by 50% vegetarians? Is it possible that you would get different data? I say you might. In fact, I predict you would, because there's research bias. And you can always lie with statistics. You can always spin it different ways. And some people do this intentionally and consciously. Some people do it a little more softly, but they're not looking to poke holes in their argument through certain lenses because of basic bias. And I'm not saying that a lot of folks are out there trying to lie to the public with studies, but I'm saying that there is a soft and subtle and pernicious way that this stuff seeps in. And if you're a researcher and your salary and your ability to feed your family depends on getting funding from various folks, then don't think you're not affected by the desire to keep that funding pool in place. And if you're the Egg Board or the National Cattlemen's Beef Association or some other industry lobby, and you want to fund a study that's going to validate the value of your products, then that's in your business interests. You're not impartial. Of course you want to find the researchers and the methodologies that will contribute to your product looking as good as possible, right? They're not impartial on this in the slightest. Why are they funding it? It's part of their business expenditures. Not because they're Puritans searching for the truth, because they want to make money selling their products. So it's a rather corrupt system. And a lot of our research, even with the peer-reviewed research that is so important today, much of it is biased now by industry profit motive.